So joining me now, Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for Axios. Jonathan, great to have you here tonight. Thanks for being here. One of the issues that the judge and I didn't get to is this issue of the dictation by the president of the response to Donald Jr.'s June 16th meeting at Trump Tower. Why is it problematic that that he would have been involved in that?
Well, it was problematic in the first instance because the statement was misleading. And
how was it misleading?
That they said it was about Russian adoption, the meeting that Don Jr. had with these Russians, and obviously that was a topic. That was a pretext.
No, I understood,
yeah.
But wasn't that something that the Russian lawyer and that group had been lobbying for and working on for a long time?
No question, but as the Trump team would now acknowledge, the meeting also included some other fairly relevant things, including emails to set it up, which Don Jr. agreed with, saying that they had dirt on Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. So, please come in. I love it.
I think it's all out there.
But is it possible? I've just always been curious about this. Is why I'm asking, because it's possible that that's what they lured him with. And they wanted to talk to him about the other thing, and they didn't really have any dirt. But they wanted to get him in the room, and they figured that would work. And the president said, who wouldn't take that meeting in today's politics?
So, but to your question, I don't know that it's legally problematic. I mean, it's not illegal to lie to the news media. It's not illegal to lie to the New York Times. And the president, of course, hasn't spoken to Bob Mueller. And as Rudy Giuliani continually reminds us, one of the reasons he hasn't spoken to Bob Mueller, one of the reasons his legal team has been restraining that, is because they don't want him to be to perjure himself. And so this is, Rudy Giuliani's literally said that out loud. He said that, these shifting explanations and misleading statements, this is why we don't want the president being interviewed by Bob Mueller.
All right. So what's your sense at the White House right now about how they feel about all of this? Because today, all of the conversation, as I just said, is the 500th day in office, but all the conversation is about these comments over the weekend. The president saying that he could pardon himself if he wanted to, that the investigation itself is unconstitutional. As far as message structuring goes, this is a failure.
So there's like two parts to this thing. Whenever I read, this is the mood in the White House about the Russian investigation, it's nonsense. They don't talk about it. It's like the one thing, Russia is the one word nobody in the West Wing talks about. They don't have meetings about it. In fact, if there's any mention of it, people try and leave the room. It's like the word that no one wants anything to do with. And that being said, there is this dynamic, particularly in the White House press shop and comms team, where they're watching the show like the rest of us. They have no earthly idea what Rudy Giuliani is going to say, to whoever in the next minute or on TV tonight. It is this completely separate operation. And honestly, they view it as a circus, a lot of them. They see this, they don't really know what's going on, they don't know what he's going to say. They assume that there is a coordination between Rudy Giuliani and the president, but I think they're very happy to be out of it and to have nothing to do with it and leave it to those guys. And the more we can just say, as spokespeople for the White House, I defer to the president's outside counsel, that's the magic sentence for all of them.
You could sense the frustration in the briefing room today.
Sure.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders basically said, look, there's a Chinese wall. We're not the legal team. If you have questions for them, you have to go see, you have to ask them. And we all know that the legal team does leak from time to time, so you can get answers from the legal team if you push hard enough. But that's a frustration, obviously, for the press corps.
It's a frustration for the press team. And, I remember when John Dowd, who wrote that memo you talked about, who was one of the authors of it, President's former lawyer, I remember when he was giving interviews and I was, talking to senior people in the White House press shop, and they were just sort of tearing their hair out. They had no idea some of this stuff was coming. They had to respond to it. So it's never been coordinated in any way, shape or form.
Jonathan, thank you. Great to see you tonight. Jonathan Swan in Washington.